Hi, everyone. Pastor Galen, lead pastor at Cheyenne Hills Church. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We hope that these podcasts will be a real encouragement to you on your spiritual journey. You can also connect with Cheyenne Hills at CheyenneHills.org. Hope you enjoy the program.
We are across the street and around the world, Cheyenne Hills.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. Nathan, welcome to the studio. And this is, I don't know when it's going to be aired, but today is the last day of legislature.
That's exactly right. And it has been a very intense 37 days.
37 days.
And so normally, you know, there's 40 days in a general session like this.
Okay.
But they leave a few days in reserve in case they need to do something, come back in for some reason.
Okay.
But it's been very, very busy.
So they could actually wrap it for a few more days? Is that what you're saying?
They could,
Okay.
yeah. They could go till
Probably
Friday.
not. Probably not. I
Right.
gotcha. Okay. Well, there's been a lot of things I've been watching, and I've been curious about what your comments on some of these things, especially has to do with education. I'm kind of curious as to what your commentary, because you have the inside look of everything. But what are some? Just lead off with some wins, losses. What is your takeaway from this session?
Well, there is one massive win, and I believe that people really need to be thankful for. There are a number of people that signed on to this bill, but the prime sponsor was Rachel Rodriguez Williams, and in the House, and Senator Sherry Steinmetz. And it's called the Life is a Human Rights Act.
Okay. And
it was House Bill 152. And what they did, last year we worked really hard and got a trigger bill in place.
Remember that.
Of course, it was enjoined in a court in Jackson. And that was just tragic. But what this bill does is walks through the questions that have been raised and answers them in law. And I think it's just a really well-written bill, and there's been a lot of work behind the scenes. And there were some ups and downs in the entire process, but it's been overall a very good thing.
So tell me what the difference. What did the trigger bill do, and then what's this new bill?
Well, the trigger bill basically just said if Roe versus Wade is overturned,
okay,
then we will do away with abortion. But it really didn't go into great detail defining what that would look like.
Okay.
But if Roe were overturned, that would fall into place. That's why it was called a trigger bill.
Gotcha.
In this case, there were a number of questions that were raised in Wyoming law as a result of that. And so what this bill does is goes back in and answers those questions systematically and puts everything in the statutes necessary to make sure that Wyoming becomes one of the safest states for babies in the womb in the country.
Wow.
And it's really good.
That is interesting.
But it took a lot of work.
Good. Did it really?
Oh, man.
Was it hard fought all the way, or is this?
Yes,
really interesting.
Kind of behind the scenes, a lot of that. And of course, that's where I come into play quite a lot.
Both on the House and the Senate side.
That's right, especially on the Senate side. But I will say that there were a number of people that were working very hard, and I'm so proud, really, of the coalition that is developing across the state. Yeah. And that's where Wyoming Family Alliance works really hard. Right. Not just to do everything on our own, even though there's a lot of work we do, but really along with partners, because what matters to us as well is making sure that the conversation that develops with other key players in the state becomes very, very strong, so that it's not just a singular individual, but a coalition of people standing for life. Yeah. And that matters a lot. You
know, for those of you out there, I know a lot of people, obviously church-wide, they're standing for life and the importance of it's biblical. I mean, it's like, you know, there's a whole journey that people have to push back. But I'm just proud of our nation, our state. Mm-hmm. And I know there's others that have, you know, states have done some different things, and different organizations are making abortions possible and affordable or whatever like that. But it's like, you know, just to stand for life. Those are some wins that I don't know that I'd ever thought I'd see in my lifetime.
That's right.
And to see some of these things overturned, it's like, well, you know, because it's one of those issues that I just don't feel like, I don't know. Personally, I don't know if I've done enough. I've never marched in front of a abortion clinic, and you know, certainly prayed for the topic. Certainly have supported people that are supporting legislature, the legislative type things. But it's a big win for our country, I think, and for, I don't know, just for our faith to say, you know, we believe that's a life and that's a baby.
You know, to put this in its context, I don't have the numbers exactly, but somewhere around the 80 mark That's the number of children that were killed this last year in the state of Wyoming through abortion. With this law in place, that will be 80 lives that are not taken.
Yeah.
And so when you put it in its context, this is where legislation is seen in its true importance. As you work very hard, there are genuine lives that are won or lost, saved or lost.
That's true.
As a result of this.
Yeah,
That puts it in its proper context.
It puts it in its context and what you do and informing people and explaining things. It's so important, Nathan. So that's great.
There was another victory, and it was just basically making it where people who want to homeschool their children. Wyoming had some pretty restrictive laws that didn't make a lot of sense. Imagine you're on a ranch off in a very distant place, and you have a couple families who are working there. One mom could not have all the kids together and then maybe trade off with the other mom, week on week or something like that.
Right.
It was, now some of that we think may have been happening, but that was one of those things where people just could not combine, in ways that may actually benefit the children. So that was a bill that passed. The prime sponsor of that.
What's that called? What's the bill?
It was called the Definition of a Home-Based Educational Program.
Okay.
Sounds like it's a big long title.
That's a big title.
But when you look at what it does, it was a very simple bill.
Yeah.
And the House Majority Floor Leader, Chip Nyman, was the one that he said, you know what, this is a big issue, and we need to really tackle that.
Yeah.
And the fun thing is the governor's already signed that into law. It just makes sense when you look at it.
For sure.
And so,
especially in rural setting, and it's like, one mom is really good in mathematics and one mom's really good at English, and like to switch off makes
absolutely
tons of sense.
Perfect.
That's awesome.
So,
well, good. So any other wins we can talk about, or even some losses maybe that you feel disappointed
there was
with?
a win, kind of a win on charter schools, for instance.
Okay.
That was good, although sadly, a really good bill. This is what happened 3 years ago as well. An individual in the House, the leader of the House, did some very, very bad things to the bill, but still the bill is important enough to go ahead and push on through. But it's important that we understand the role of education. Education is one of the largest. So if you go to it's called the Parent Power Index, and this is put out by the Center for Education Reform. If you go to the Parent Power Index, about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, Wyoming was 50th in the nation as being the least free state in the United States for educational freedom.
In other words, school choice.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, 3 years ago, there was a bill that was passed that bumped us from 50th to 47th.
Okay.
I mean, it's not much.
No.
And that was simply to allow 3 charter schools to get started.
Oh, okay.
And then there was a bill this year that basically just kind of continues that process, but then puts a moratorium on any other charter schools. Mm-hmm. So in many ways, I think that we may have gone a step backwards. It's maybe 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards.
So there won't be any more charter schools?
Not for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
But and that's what's so tragic about it.
I didn't know that.
And so where we are right now is we are cementing into place for ourselves in Wyoming. Yeah. We're telling the nation that when it comes to educational freedom and when it comes to parents having a right to educate their children, we're saying not here. And that's a tragedy that needs to end in Wyoming.
Yeah.
But when we go from 50th in the nation to 47th, and then I think sadly it may mean a slide back, this is not good.
Not too far to fall, but
this I think is the civil rights issue of Wyoming from here on in.
Interesting.
And part of the reason is Wyoming, when you look at just the sheer amount of money we spend per pupil, people from all over the nation look at Wyoming and say, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a lot, especially when you adjust for cost
averages?
of living. Yeah, so it's a little over $18,000 per pupil.
In Wyoming.
In Wyoming.
Where's the rest of the world, the rest of the United States in?
So I saw this and I a while back, and so this is just a rough number. So forgive me, someone is probably going to look at this later, but it was somewhere around the less than 15,000 mark.
Okay.
So we're a little over 3,000 more. Now that when you look at it, if you look at that in the Rocky Mountain region, is actually lower than that because that higher number comes from weaving in numbers from New England and other places where their cost of living is much higher as well.
Oh, gotcha.
But you look at that, Wyoming is way up there at the top.
That's interesting. That's crazy. Well, that's one of the things that I know I'm hopeful that'll happen, but for a Christian school to thrive, to have those monies follow the student is I mean, would be huge because right
Vital.
now, if you want to go to a Christian school, you pay the whole freight.
Absolutely.
And we're having to increase our tuition next year, and it's already. I think it's right at $5,000. It's going to be close to $6,000 this year. But and even at $6,000 per student, we can't even come close to competing with paying teachers.
Yeah.
And or certainly paying the light bill and all that. That has to be, the church has to take care of all those things. The school can't pay for itself in that way. So I'm hopeful for that day. The money will follow the student no matter where they would like to go.
Right.
Now help me out with this. There's some states that are actually putting that into place this year. I mean, Arkansas, I heard that. Is that going to go into place like next fall?
Yes, right.
The money will follow the student.
That's right.
Wow.
So this has been wonderful. While Wyoming has been in the legislative session, Utah passed this bill.
Okay.
Arkansas passed something similar. Now, it's not just it's not a off-the-shelf bill. They have to build it for their own state. But Utah passed it. Iowa, Governor Kim Reynolds signed that into law in that state. Of course, Florida already had it. Arizona already had it. West Virginia as well. But we're watching as people are fixing some of the major issues that have erupted, or people finally are becoming aware of. They are issues that go way back, decades and decades and decades. But people are starting to recognize something needs to be done. Yeah. In Wyoming, when you look at the populace at large, people are all saying, yeah, we have an issue and it needs to be addressed. Yeah. But we also have some very powerful entrenched forces in Wyoming's education system here. And so it's going to take some work.
Are those national forces? Are they local forces? How does that
Some of them are tied in nationally, but many of them are also local.
Okay.
But it's the sheer amount of money many times involved.
And that's why. People don't want to. Well, and I think there's an argument out there. It's like, well, if you just increase school choice, it's going to make all schools better.
Yeah.
There's no way. I think we've talked about this before, but there's no way that churches or the parochial schools could handle everybody. I mean, it's obviously not everybody wants to go to a Christian school, but if you could just have the money follow, it's going to make. Well, I can tell you, the kids that are reading in our school and right here in our Christian school, our first graders, our kindergartners are reading in second, third, and fourth grade levels.
Right.
That's our lowest one is second grade in kindergarten.
That's right.
We have a second grade class that I saw the numbers, and those kids, I think the lowest is at level like 2.6, let's say, but most of them are in the 4s, a couple of 5s, and a 6 from our second graders. Yeah. So we can if you just give us a shot, we can teach these kids how to read and do mathematics, and it's fantastic. It's like that'll make everybody better.
The principal of your school really focuses in on literacy, and she has done a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
But it's partly when you look at a private school or you look at a charter school, what they allow for is innovation. Okay. And so when you look at a public school, they will talk about different innovative ways that they do different things. Yeah. But it's innovation within a very, very small window of opportunity. Okay. So they can't go beyond a very small path. So they'll talk about innovation, but they mean something completely different than what a lot of charter schools and private schools are able to pursue. Yeah. And so you'll watch other groups really flourish and really become the cutting edge on educating children because they actually have the opportunity to do so. Yeah. And so part of it is there needs to be a kind of reformation within the public school system to allow them to truly be innovative and not just try a new, somewhat different path that has kind of been tried before in other ways. And so it sounds like I'm really hammering on public schools regarding innovation, but there is an issue there.
No, but there's something that these teachers know and they've learned, and some of them are learning, that there is a way that kids can learn to read. And there's teachers that I know of in public schools that are helping kids that have fallen way behind, and the way they're getting them caught up is using the same tools that we use every day in a Christian school. Right. It's phonics. It's just basics. Right. But it's like when people are knowing this, they know how to get kids caught up, and that's what I'm learning anyway. I'm figuring out there's people that know this, but for whatever reason, it's not the broad based education that's going on. And I think if there's some competition, I think all kids would have access to
That's
this.
exactly
That's
right.
what I think.
And that's where competition, we see this in places like Arizona and Florida.
Yeah.
Competition actually improves all the schools as a result.
Yeah.
One other important piece of education legislation that passed, actually it's being worked on today, but it just made it through third reading, is protecting the opportunity for girls to play against other girls in sports.
I actually saw that bill pass. That was really good.
And so that's a wonderful thing, and I think it's also pretty important. We have heard people try to say, and I just want to address this. Obviously, I don't stand on the House or Senate floor anymore, but I want to address this. I've heard people say, well, it's not a problem. People are not showing us any problems here in Wyoming. But there's two things I love to point out. One, you don't know every single issue that has risen, across the state of Wyoming.
Yeah.
But secondly, when you see a prairie fire all around you, it's pretty important to start working on your house.
Yeah, right.
Your house may not be on fire, but if everyone else's is,
right,
it's pretty smart to start preparing now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's
and
true.
So that's where making sure that as we watch this issue erupt across the nation, Wyoming is no island. Wyoming is right smack in the middle of a very connected world, especially in the year 2023 with the internet and everything else. We are aware of what's happening. And so I love to make those statements, but I get to make them with you rather than on the house floor.
We can, right. And hopefully, I don't know how many this would reach, but it's like the few that are, I know that they're very interested in what's going on in our state. And so is there anything that didn't pass that was concerning for you?
Yes, several.
Okay.
So first of all, there were two bills that would address on children, the mutilation of children.
Oh, yes.
In the name of the sexual revolution.
Right.
And we had a senator from up in Casper and one from closer to home here, who both tried to address this. Sadly, both were essentially shoveled into the speaker's drawer, and they didn't make it all the way. Yeah. And that's a tragedy.
No, and that one actually made some national news. I don't know if you've seen this. It's out there in national news, and there's people that have picked up on this and saying, Wyoming, they called out the speaker's name and is blocking this idea. But this to me is, I don't understand how, I don't care if you're conservative or liberal or what, I don't even whether you're Christian or not. And I'm not saying I know what these people believe. I don't know what they believe, but I don't understand why we can't protect the innocence of our kids. And so this one definitely protects the innocence of kids.
Right.
Wasn't this the bill that said, okay, we're not going to talk about
No,
that's a different bill.
That was a different bill.
Okay,
but they actually tie together. So the first one just said that a child under the age of 18, that you can't go and slice body parts off of them.
Okay.
And that's a mutilation.
Gotcha.
But you're right. You brought that up. That was a bill that actually has wide support. The former president of the Senate brought it. Very, very thoughtful gentleman from Star Valley. And he brought that bill. And basically it just says when it comes to sexual material, we shouldn't be talking about these kinds of things. It's just third grade and down.
That's what I thought.
Mind you, I think that third grade is kind of low. But by the same token, I appreciate what he was saying.
Right. At least that.
Right.
Can't we at least agree? And when we interviewed those school board members, remember that?
Yeah.
Those potential school board, and there were some that you weren't interviewing, I just interviewed. Mm-hmm. And that was my argument. It's like, can't we agree to protect the innocence of our kids?
Right.
And there were some that just have a different worldview than you and I do, but it just doesn't show up on the radar. I don't know. I don't understand exactly why, but it's like, can't we even agree with this third grade and down? And they say, well, kind of, but, and the but is I don't know. Everybody's got their own different angle on it, but it's like that's the most frustrating one for me. I mean, I don't understand that one.
It was very popular in the Senate. It passed all the way through the Senate, but sadly, it was stuck in the speaker's drawer.
Yeah.
I can't assign motives, but what I would say is I think that's a bill that's important enough for us to say, okay, this conversation has to continue, because when it comes to the sexualization of children, at the end of the day, regardless of where you stand on anything, you are a lot more than just sex.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to our minds and in what it means to be a person.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're constantly hammering on a particular issue, a person begins to think of themselves quite differently as just an object rather than as something that, something much larger than that. And that's the thing for a Christian, that we see ourselves created in the image of God,
right,
as a mind, a heart, a soul, all those things.
And I've told you this before. We've talked about it. I don't expect somebody to have my Christian worldview.
Right.
If it's someone that doesn't have Christ, they're not going to see things like
Right.
you and I see those things. Okay,
Right.
and the image of God and all those things. But I still don't. Can you help me understand how anyone can say, what's the argument to say we're not going to protect the innocence of even third grade and down? Can you get behind that and understand it for me?
I'll try to. So I'll tell you, I have a hard time really understanding it.
Okay.
But I think what they think is that anyone who would push back against teaching children this stuff must be coming from a position of hatred, which is not true.
No.
They must think that, even bringing the topic up is simply a sign of something that they find frustrating and detestable.
Yeah.
That may be a genuine feeling that they have. And I can affirm that is just not true. It isn't true. We truly believe that children should have their innocence protected.
Absolutely.
And that we need to protect people in a situation like this.
Well, I hope that there's some way in the next, hunk of time that we can get the powers that be. That I don't know. At some point, we got to get this out there. To me, this is. I mean, it's kind of hit me. There's two things that hit me. Okay, this is just me.
Yeah.
One is, okay, we've got a long way to go yet on this battle to protect the innocents. That's the reason I got involved in the school board issues, because of the innocence of kids.
Right.
Why can't we protect that
Right.
with curriculum and those kind of things? Well, now it's we on a legislative level, and I don't know how to. I know this is your world, but I don't know how to get involved in this. This is a passionate thing for me, and I don't understand it. It's like we at least agree third grade and under.
Right.
That I just doesn't. So somehow we got to engage with that. But the other thing it did for me is like, okay, well, we're gonna crank up our Christian school here to say, we're doing everything we can to keep as many classes and make them available as we possibly can, because it's like we need to give people opportunities and options. And I know there's a charter school opening up.
That's right.
Cheyenne
Classical Academy.
Cheyenne Classical, and that's going to be a fantastic school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can actually plug this a little bit. Tell us a little bit about the sign up and how that's going. Go ahead.
ShineClassical.org.
Okay.
A person can go there, and we're entering right now. We're getting all those names together, and of course, there's also a place for teachers to put their resumes in and those kind of things. Our headmaster's really working on that, but I think this is a great opportunity to point out there have been victories and there have been losses.
Yeah.
But this is one of those things where we understand that we cannot grow weary in doing well.
That's exactly
For in due
right.
season, we will reap if we don't faint.
We've got to continue on. And it's like, you make sure we're doing what God asks us to do until the Lord returns. And it's like protecting the innocence of our kids. I can defend that every day till Sunday and twice on Sunday.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just unbelievable. We can't agree on that. So keeping, our school open to see the Cheyenne Classical. Now, I met the headmaster at BJ, Buchanan? Buckman, BJ Buckman.
It's spelled like Buckman, but it's Bookman.
Bookman, okay. Great guy. And now that school is going to be kindergarten through fourth?
Just in the first year.
Okay.
Over time, it will go K through 12.
Okay. So you got big plans.
That's right.
Big
That's
plans
exactly
for that one.
right.
And as far as our school is concerned, I think we're gonna press up to fourth grade this year. And mostly it's because of all the things that have been shut down. It's like, we got to try.
Yes,
and so we're going to do our very best we can. So, anything else? Those are disappointing ones. It kind of gets me wound up a little bit. It's frustrating to me.
Well, know this: you can walk away with this is a big victory. Next year, our prayer is that 90 babies that could have died
Okay,
will live.
There you go.
And so when you put it in its proper context, this is the nature of struggles like this.
That's good.
These are all big issues, and we don't win everything, but we won some big things.
Won some big ones. That's a great way to end. And I think as we go throughout our life and continue on, I think as we always say here, listen, we've got to continue on and be strong and very courageous. God bless you guys.